The story begins in a world suffering from a severe water crisis. Once green and fertile lands have turned into dry deserts, and over half of the population has died from dehydration. The remaining survivors live in areas where water is still available, usually in places controlled by the rich. The poor, on the other hand, are forced to survive in rural villages. In one such village, we meet the Holmes family. Nest, the father, Catherine, the mother, Mary, their eldest daughter, and Jerome, their young son. Nest used to own a large piece of farmland that his father worked, but due to the water shortage, he can no longer grow crops. He has repeatedly asked the government for help, claiming that his land is still fertile and can produce crops if given water, but no one listens. Determined to make things work, Nest begins digging on his land himself, hoping to strike water and save his family by farming again. One day, his efforts pay off, and water starts to flow. To harness it, Nest installs a water extraction machine. But when two thieves show up to steal the machine, Nest catches them in the act. The thieves try to pretend they are in need of water. But when one pulls a gun, Nest shoots first, knowing that such threats are common. After the chaos settles, Nest finds that the little water that had been flowing has stopped, and he realizes he'll have to dig even further to find more water. Next, Nest and Jerome visit the Watermen, a group of workers employed by private companies that install machines to extract water for the rich cities. Nest delivers supplies to them on his donkey, including alcohol and drinking water. One of the Watermen, Max, is someone Nest knows well. Nest approaches Max, explaining that the machines installed nearby have drained the water from his land. He asks Max to move the machines to another location, but Max dismisses him, saying it's not his decision and that he should speak to their boss. Frustrated, Nest returns home. But as if things couldn't get worse, his donkey trips on a rock and breaks its leg. The poor animal, already suffering from thirst, is put out of its misery by Nest. With no more transport, Nest visits an auction house where old robots are sold and repaired. There, he buys a robot to help with deliveries, much to the excitement of Jerome. They then visit Catherine, who has been in the hospital after a recent accident. She relies on an OAR device to help her walk. Unfortunately, the family can't afford to bring the OAR technology home, so they make regular visits. After leaving the hospital, they meet Ravi, an old friend of Nest's who is homeless and mentally unstable. Despite having very little water left, Nest gives some to Ravi and his family, showing kindness even in tough times. Back home, Flame, a troublemaker who works with the robots, approaches Nest and asks for the robot. Nest refuses, knowing that Flame is trouble and will cause drama if he lends it out. It's also revealed that Flame is romantically involved with Nest's daughter, Mary. Despite Nest's warnings that Flame is not a good person, Mary refuses to listen. She resents her father's strictness and has grown closer to Flame, leading to tension between them. The next day, Nest goes to look for another water source, but everywhere he goes, he finds the land dry. The big machines installed by the Watermen have drained all the water from the area, and once again, Nest is left disappointed. While Nest is out looking for a water source, he talks to Jerome. He says, "You know, when I went to the city, I saw a beautiful girl with short hair. You've grown up now, and you promised me you'd help me find someone like her. I don't know how long we can keep living like this, so we should make the most of what we have and enjoy it." Jerome and Nest share a nice moment talking and laughing together. But when Nest returns home, things take a turn. Mary, his daughter, demands money and says, "Dad, I'm going with Flame. I can't breathe here anymore." Nest is upset and says, "What do you mean? You can't breathe? I've cared for you since you were a little girl, giving you everything I could, and this is how you repay me?" Mary responds from upstairs, "I'm not living here, I'm just surviving. This isn't a life I want." Nest tries to convince Mary to stay, but when she refuses, he locks her in a room and shuts the window so she can't see Flame. Nest then goes to the city to deliver supplies, but when he gets back, he discovers that the robot is missing from their garage. This shocks him, and he feels panic setting in. He knows that only Flame could have stolen it, so he heads straight to the Watermen to ask if Flame has been there. When Nest arrives, Max and the other Watermen immediately attack him, accusing him of stealing their supplies. They shout, You took what we earned with our hard work and sold it somewhere else. Nest protests. What are you talking about? I just came to ask if Flame brought my robot here. But the watermen aren't listening. They beat him up, convinced he's responsible for the theft. Nest realizes that Flame must have taken the supplies and sold them. He somehow escapes from the watermen and starts searching for Flame. After a while, he finds him, and Nest's suspicions are confirmed. Flame did steal the supplies. Flame is sitting comfortably, eating, while Nest points a gun at him to force him to come with him to the watermen and tell them the truth. As they walk, Nest grows weaker from dehydration, and Flame takes advantage of the situation. Flame says, "I've still got some of the liquor from the supplies. Let's share it. If we don't drink something now, we'll die from thirst. Sure, the watermen might beat us up, but we can at least survive long enough to explain." Nest agrees, knowing that without any water he has no choice. But as soon as Flame is freed from his ropes, he attacks Nest. The poor man, already weak from thirst and the beating he endured, is left bleeding and unable to defend himself. Flame forces all the liquor into Nest's mouth, planning to frame him. When the watermen find them, they'll think Nest stole the supplies and drank their wine. To make things worse, Flame ties Nest to the robot and stages the scene so it looks like the robot went out of control, attacking Nest and causing his death. The story takes a dark turn when Nest dies, and everyone believes the robot was responsible for his death. Jerome, devastated by the loss of his father, sits there full of anger and tries to destroy the robot, convinced it took Nest's life. Flame approaches him and says, "What's the point in breaking the robot? It will be useful to us in the future. Don't worry, I'm here to protect your family, including you and your daughter." Later, Flame talks to Max and demands a pipeline so he can start farming on Nest's land. He shows Max a knife and says, "Remember this knife? The one you had when you were looking for supplies? When you attacked Nest, he took this knife from you. I found it next to his body with your name engraved on it. Everyone knows you had a fight with him. Maybe I should tell everyone that you stabbed Nest during the fight, and when you couldn't kill him, you waited for another chance to kill him and blamed the robot." Max, scared, agrees to Flang's demands and secretly builds a pipeline to irrigate the land, which soon begins to produce crops. Everyone is thrilled to see the farm thriving again. Flang works hard to plow the fields and grow crops, and the hard work pays off. Crops begin to grow everywhere. Jerome and the others are happy to see this, and Flang's bond with Mary grows stronger. Eventually, Flang and Mary get married, and Flang reflects that all of this might have been Nest's. He thinks that if Nest were alive, either Mary would have married him, or he would have inherited the land from Nest's death. But now, Flang has everything for himself. A few days later, bank employees arrive, and Flang is alarmed. They inform him that Nest had mortgaged the land, and now the crops that are growing there belong to the bank. Flang tries to argue, saying, "If you'd told me earlier, I would have looked for another piece of land." But the bank employees won't listen. "If you don't pay within a week, you'll lose it all," they say. Flang panics. He realizes that Nest tricked him by mortgaging the land. Desperate for money, he decides to sell the robot to pay off the loan. He tells Jerome that he's going to sell it to get enough money to settle the debt with the bank. However, Flang is not entirely trustworthy. He goes to Ravi and tells him he'll provide food and water for him and his child if he comes with him. Poor Ravi, not knowing the full story, agrees and leaves his wife behind. But soon, Flang chooses Ravi's child over him and gives the money he gets from the bank for the robot. Ravi becomes furious when he learns the truth and confronts Flang, but Flang doesn't listen. Ravi tries to fight back, but the men working for the bank shoot and kill him. They also attempt to kill Flang, believing that he sold Ravi's child with his consent. Flang narrowly escapes, leaving the robot behind, and races to tell Jerome that the money he earned was used to save the child, not the robot. In the end, Nest miraculously comes back to life. Mary, however, is not allowed to leave with Flang. After settling the bank loan, Flang manages to get the land back. While all of this was happening, the robot, still functioning on its default settings, managed to make its way back to its original owner, Kelvin. During the shootout, some of the robot's parts got damaged, and it ended up heading towards Kelvin, who was shocked to see it return. The robot had Nestor written on it, so Kelvin tried reaching out to Nestor through a radio, hoping to reconnect with him. However, when Jerome hears the message, he's surprised to learn that Flang had sold the robot. Now Kelvin is claiming it as his, and Jerome decides that when Kelvin comes to reclaim it, he'll be the one to go and retrieve it. One day, Jerome visits Ravi's wife, only to find that neither Ravi nor his child has returned. He begins to suspect something is off, especially when Flang arrives and takes the child away. The next day, Jerome sets off for the city, but at the city border, he's stopped because he's under 18. Just then, a girl named Anna appears. She's secretly working as a human smuggler and offers to help Jerome get into the city for a smaller fee. Jerome is surprised by Anna because she matches the description of a girl Nest had once told him about. When he asks about it, Anna denies knowing Nest, and Jerome doesn't press the matter further. Anna hides Jerome in a freight car heading to the city, and after the journey, Jerome finally arrives. There, he meets Kelvin, who gives him the robot back after making repairs. As Jerome inspects the robot more closely, he notices it has a camera that recorded moments, including a few blurry but clear enough videos to reveal the truth. One of the videos shows Flame killing Nestor and then attaching him to the robot. Jerome is shocked. His father didn't die in an accident after all. Jerome takes the robot home but doesn't tell Flang that he's discovered the truth. He worries about how Mary would react, especially since she's pregnant, and he doesn't want to burden her with the knowledge of Flang's crime. Instead, he decides to confront Flang with a plan. Jerome tells him, "I heard Ravi calling you." Flang, panicked, thinks that Ravi is somehow still alive. Flang tries to brush it off, but Jerome's plan is already in motion. Jerome writes a letter and sends it to Flang, which Flang believes is from Ravi. The letter instructs Flang to meet at the spot where Nestor died. Flang, realizing something's wrong, heads there but falls into a hole and breaks his leg. He starts calling for help, and that's when Jerome appears with a song in his hand. Seeing the anger in Jerome's eyes, Flang realizes that Jerome has uncovered the truth, and this was all part of his plan. Flang tries to plead with Jerome, saying, "Look, I'm sorry for what happened. I care about you and Mary. If anything happens to me, Mary won't be able to handle it. I'm leaving for her sake." But Jerome doesn't listen and shoots Flang dead. Afterward, he resets the robot's memory to prevent Mary from ever finding out the truth. He doesn't want her to know what really happened. As days pass, Mary grows worried when Flang doesn't return. Jerome tells her that Flang wasn't a good person and abandoned them. Mary, heartbroken, begins to hate Flang, letting go of the love she once had for him. Jerome, coldly seeking revenge, watches her suffer. Now, Jerome and Mary take charge of the household, running the farm and selling the crops they've cultivated. Together, they move forward with their lives, and the film ends on this bittersweet note. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon to stay updated on new videos. Stay safe and healthy, everyone.